Welcome to Fighters Drinking Coffee. We are here today with Andrea Tang. She is an author, the host of the BJJ Mental Models podcast, and a BJJ competitor. She's been very active this year too in the competition scene. So, Andrea, say hello.
Hello, great to be here with you guys.
Hello. I guess let's start on the end of my list there. Let's start with kind of competition stuff. What you've got coming up or looking forward to this year, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Well, like we were just talking about before we started recording, I'm looking at a potential super fight matchup in a couple of weeks where I'll hopefully be competing alongside my coach here, Scott Vance.
That's right.
My teammate Shane, who's previously been on the podcast. And I'm also looking toward the IBJJF Nogi season, so hoping to hit the majors this year at Pans. Probably not Euros this time around, though that was a fun little adventure, but definitely Pans and Worlds are high on my priority list. And I'd like to look at some ADCC opens as well, because I did that moveset once and I really enjoyed it, so I'd like to get a little more experience there.
Awesome. Yeah, I was looking at that one, and it was one your home state in I think October.
Oh, Kentucky, yeah.
ADCC Open.
There's an ADCC. Oh, Louisville.
Louisville, yeah.
Fun fact about Kentucky. I was talking about this with my family recently. Family's from Kentucky. I'm from Kentucky. In Kentucky, people judge their awareness of your regional knowledge by how you say the name of the city, Louisville, which is the way the entire world calls it Louisville.
And as a native Kentucky boy.
They say like Louisville or Louisville.
Oh, okay.
Louisville. It like gets like hickified significantly.
I always heard it as Louisville.
Yeah, and people say that. People say Louisville, but I think I've decided to join the rest of the world. It's Louisville.
Like Slugger.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I guess that's how
Louisville, a civilized way to speak would be Louisville. So,
but you want to fit in, you got to kind of slow.
They'll know me like, oh yeah, all right, you're not from here, and this will be nice to you because I'm Southerners, but like, sort of, I have thoughts.
They'll just assume you're a tourist.
Louisville,
Yankee.
Louisville, and/or Louisville is a bit more like Midwest,
right?
It becomes less like there's less like Southern charm to it. It's just like this like mongrel cities. I'm hating on it. Yeah, I hate on it. It's actually a pretty cool city, to be honest with you, but I did see that. And that's interesting. They're going to look to Louisville. Maybe we'll go. Maybe we'll go to Louisville.
That could be a fun DMA field trip.
It would be, yeah, a little hometown, what would you call it? Pilgrimage?
Yeah.
Something like that.
New Jersey.
I don't know. I like New Jersey. She's from Jersey.
I think a lot of DMAs from New Jersey. There's me. There's Charles, one of the owners.
There's Mark. There's multiple Marks from Jersey. We're overrun by Jersey folk.
We are.
And that one's in Atlantic City.
Yeah.
I kind of like it.
Yeah. That's the one that I've done before. I did that one with Trey. Right. We had a good time there.
Right.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was IBJJF Open in New Jersey is in a weird part.
It's in Jersey City though, wasn't it?
No, it's not.
Do you remember where it was?
I haven't competed there, but I have some friends at Princeton BJJ who have done it, and yeah, apparently it's just like Nowheresville, Jersey. Like no one actually.
Yeah, I searched like the venue, and it was just like in the middle of nothing.
Right.
It's not a big state. Like it's easy to get.
It's a tiny little state, but yeah. I don't know if they actually do anything in that location aside from host occasional jiu-jitsu competitions.
It seems like everyone in like Arlington/DC is from Jersey, or at least like 45% of the people from here are like Jersey natives. They're like punching.
There's a bunch of us.
They're producing a lot of humans.
Yeah,
I think that's like somehow they export a lot of people, which is.
We do all end up fleeing the state, so
maybe that's saying something. So okay, so yeah, all right, so you've done ADCC. That's one rule set. IBJJF rule set really well, and super fights.
Mm-hmm.
What do you like the most?
IBJJF is probably the one that I'm most used to, and I spend the most time training it. Like I've gotten just like in the habit of counting the points in my head, because it also informs not just IBJJF itself, but I think like most local tournaments where you hop in to get some action to train up for maybe a bigger event, like they tend to default to the IBJJF scoring system. So I think it's the one that I'm most accustomed to. But I don't know, man. I had a lot of fun doing ADCC Atlantic City. Like, it was newer to me. It definitely took some getting used to. But I liked that I could be a little bit more open with my game in some ways. Like, I do think that I fall into the trap sometimes of when I'm prepping for the big IBJJF majors of getting so focused on scoring that like I play this very tight, I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? To play this very tight, controlled game, but I'm not really willing to open up and experiment that much. Like I know it works for me, and that's what I do. Whereas I think I can be a little bit more dynamic in ADCC rule set because the first half there's no points and you can kind of experiment a little bit more. So, yeah, I don't know. I think there are benefits and drawbacks to each of them, but yeah, no, I just like getting the variety in.
Yeah, the ADCC scoring it's like tough to score even when the points kick in.
It is.
So they make it. They want you to submit people.
They do, and I like that.
Yeah.
I like that it pushes for that. I like that there are more submissions that are legal also because I've been kind of enjoying picking up the leg lock game. It's still new to me.
Mm-hmm.
I defer to both of you guys. You have both kind of been mentors in that area. But it's something that I've been having a lot of fun with. And that's, I think, less of a factor in my particular rule set in IBJJF since I'm still a purple belt.
Right.
And I like that you kind of get an earlier taste with it with ADCC and some of the other rule sets. So it kind of opens things up a little bit more. I like that ADCC also encourages wrestlers to play their A game, so that can be a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, most people aren't aware, but ADCC when it first was founded, it was supposed to be like the UFC of grappling.
Mm-hmm.
So they made the rule set intentionally a little like, well, I'll just say different.
Yeah,
for simplicity's sake, but they set it up so that it's supposed to be the best grappler with whatever style or hybrid of styles they want to leverage can come in and win in different ways. And they as already stated, they incentivize the submission. But like you said, if a wrestler comes in, there's, to my knowledge, short of like catch wrestling, which I don't think as a sport is that common these days. There's probably some people out there doing it.
I think it's had like a minor resurgence lately. But
He likes catch wrestling.
I like that a lot.
He likes,
but yeah, I think it's had like a little bit of a resurgence lately, but the rule set of ADCC is a little bit closer, minus like, obviously you can't pin, but it's like you don't tap out and catch wrestling, you pin yourself, but
interesting.
Well, I guess you can also tap out, but the idea is you can use the submission to create the pin.
And if you break something along the way, it's no big deal.
So you should have tapped out.
Right.
But so, yeah, I mean, it definitely has like more of that, like you're saying, wrestling, penalizing the guard pull, and, your pass or your takedown doesn't count until you've got the shoulders on the mat, like those little
nuances.
Yeah.
yeah.
It changes the way the game is played.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I did my first ADCC competition, I did end up in overtime in my final match. And that girl, I think you remember because you were cornering me remotely over the phone. She was like a state champion wrestler and an MMA fighter. So she had a nasty takedown game. And in overtime rules for ADCC, you can't really pull guard. You have to stand with the person unless you want to eat that penalty. So I was like, all right, I guess I am just going to wrestle this state champion and we'll see what happens. And it wound up actually creating some really fun scrambles. So
Yeah.
It was my first time in competition being run onto the concrete and having to continue. That happened a second time in the super fight that I did this past year.
And it won't be the last time. Go to ADCC Louisville or Oklahoma or whatever.
I'm sure it'll happen again.
Yeah. Well, get like carpet burns or something.
Yeah.
So if they always seem like they end up in like some hotel. So
we got Hilton Ballroom.
Yeah.
Right.
Just smash into the chairs. There's like a crowd of people. You'll roll on top of them.
Right. You'll probably crash into some plastic folding chairs in the process.
You will. Well, the resets are super interesting this is something that you probably heard me talk about, like with like new people when explaining how competitions are just competitions.
Right.
It's not like training where we're going to bump into someone and we'll just reset ourselves.
Mhm.
And it's the resets are like an interesting factor in any competitive environment you're in. It's a lot more, we'll say, civilized, I suppose, I guess.
Sure.
Civilized and savage is the spectrum. Civilized being, I guess, a IBJJF, perhaps, ADCC being like, no, man, go. We'll let we'll let you know when you can stop.
Right. Yeah. No, because I remember when we hit like the ballroom floor in that venue, and like Trey, who was in my corner, was like, "Don't stop. The ref hasn't called for you to reset you yet. You have to keep on moving."
That's
And
good
so,
awareness.
yeah. So I was like, "All right, I guess I can't settle here. Like I have to stay on tops."
Think like they're like, I believe the terms and conditions are that if the action continues, they're just going to let you go.
Right. Yeah.
So it's sort of like up to you and the other person, like, are we done fighting on the concrete or whatever?
She was not done fighting. So I was like, okay, you're not done fighting. I guess I'm not done fighting either.
When the crowd stops you.
The crowd,
They will, and eventually...
if you roll onto like 5 other people, the ref would be like, all right.
Right.
That's enough.
So this is you broke in the barriers, you've taken out the table, like let's...
But they want a little bit of that, right? And you guys have probably all seen like highlight reels of dudes who just keep banging it out wherever they are. And
Right.
a little bit of that is like exciting stuff.
That's all I do. Dude,
Yep.
did he slam escape like into the table? I've seen that.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Oh, that's gone viral on
There we
Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so then super fights. Do you like the stage?
I do. It took some getting used to. I remember my first time doing a super fight. I was like a brand new purple belt. It was a really cool, it was Copa Elite. Shout out to Dimitri, who I think puts on a fantastic show, with the Copa Elite series. But it was my first time doing a super fight. I think it was my second time ever competing at purple belt against like a grappler that I really admired, who had, she was a little bit more experienced, and I think she had competed a fair bit more at that rank than I had. But it was less, I think, like the experience difference that got into my head, and more like the fact that it was like, I felt like I was experiencing stage fright for the first time, which was interesting to me because I think in tournaments, I get nerves, right? I'm like, okay, I want to go out. I want to be able to do my thing. Like it's normal to kind of feel that adrenaline dump. But I've never really been worried about like, oh God, there's a crowd watching me. And like, they're watching like the 2 adult black belts, like 2 mats over who are like creating a highlight reel for flow grappling. Like no one really cares about my match. I care about my match. My corner cares about my match, but that's about it. Versus the super fights, like people have paid for tickets to come and see this. And so there is that pressure not only of like, I want to perform well against this other athlete. I want to, show that I can do good jiu-jitsu. I want to put what I've been practicing into play. I want to win, ideally. But there's also that added, I think, factor, that piece of pressure that's like, I also want to give the audience what they're paying for. Like, I don't want to be boring. I don't want to look stupid in front of like all of these people. I want to be entertaining. I want to be interesting as well. So there's, I think, just like a little bit more pressure.
There's a few more factors to think about.
Yeah. But yeah, I think so that first time that kind of caught me by surprise because I was like, why am I nervous in like a different way from how I'm usually nervous? And then my second time doing Copa Elite, I was like sort of ready for like the stage fright to hit alongside the normal jiu-jitsu jitter. So I was like, okay, I know what this is now. All right. So I think my mind was a bit more at ease, and I really liked it. I had a lot of fun doing that fight. So
yeah,
do you think the like crowd pressure caused a change in your game too? Like, do you think that like that first one when you went out there, if it like changed the way that you were planning on approaching it, just because you felt like it was a different atmosphere, right?
I think a little bit, yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I think there's a little bit more incentive to take risks, I think, when you're like, because you've been out there as well, like in front of the crowd, you're like, okay, I don't want to just stall and close guard forever. I have to make something happen. Nobody wants to watch me stall and close guard forever. So like, I might be a little bit more willing to kind of push the pace and open up and maybe take a few more. I try to take intelligent risks still because I don't want to do something that's going to compromise my game entirely. But I feel like I have to be a little bit more willing to put myself out there and play like maybe a more aggressive game than I normally would. Because again, I want to make sure the audience is getting what they came for. So, and there is also still like a ref who's handing out penalties for stalling as well. So you also don't want to eat those negatives either. So
I was looking for those in mine. I didn't see them yet, but
yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah.
Mike was like stuck with a dude holding on to him.
Oh yeah.
On guard. And I told him you should have slammed him. Dimitri probably wouldn't have. I don't think he wants that.
Nah, that's
As long as ADCC.
I want to be
Fight to Win kind of like slams, by the way.
Okay.
Just by the way.
All right. So slams are in the rule set for Fight to Win.
They were. I'll check.
Okay.
I'll
All right.
check.
That's good to know.
Once
That's
upon a time.
important thing to
No.
know.
Once upon a time, they were like, it was like a feature. He's like, yo, we'll let you slam.
Yeah.
So he was like, it's like a little bit of that like same psychology as ADCC. Where he's
Yeah,
like,
there were the last one, the one that was just in Pittsburgh. There were definitely slams in Pittsburgh,
Okay.
but it might be like the new ADCC rule set where you can slam to do submissions.
Okay. But not to just slam their
Yeah,
throat.
not just to slam.
I think they just changed that too. Like,
Yeah, all right.
it's just for escaping submissions, at least for ADCC.
We'll double check.
Right.
We'll double
So
check.
you have to wait for them to like look for a guillotine and be like, okay, now I can slam you out of this.
When I saw one guy, like, he got picked up in guard and he went for like a Nogi Ezekiel and the guy just slammed him. And they're like, yeah, if you didn't just try to do Ezekiel, you would have slammed him.
Woo.
So,
Note to self.
yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
Don't do Nogi Ezekiels.
Yeah.
When you're lifted above the ground.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. 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 All that stuff, all the other factors, it gets easier.
Yeah.
It gets easier. There's always some mental people. What do people these say? They call them intrusive thoughts these days. Is that what they call them? I feel like that word's made to throw.
Yeah.
The intrusive thoughts of all the external pressures that you can allow in to your brain can influence things for sure. I think if you just go out there and you're like, I just got to beat this lady.
Yeah.
I just got to beat this dude, whatever.
Which I think was more
Just go
of my,
hunt.
for sure. And I think that was more of my mindset the second time around, where it's like, okay, I'm here to win. Like,
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
and I think I adopted the mentality, which I think was more productive, of like, if I go out there and I play my game and I do what I know I can do, and I do what I do in training, and I fight, like I fight to win. I look for the W. Like, it will be entertaining. Like, I know that will be something that's exciting, and it will kind of kill those two birds with one stone.
There you go.
Rather than like separating it out in my head and being like, oh, is this gonna like is this like, is the audience gonna want to see this? Like, but will I win if I do this? Am I going to give up points if I do this other thing? Just like not overthinking it and just streamlining that thought process.
It doesn't have to be flashy moves or
Right.
like that, but if you're just pushing pace and,
Yeah.
looking like you're actively trying to win, fight to win.
Yeah.
It's a good game.
Yeah, it's very, very good.
Direct.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, you can, and this was something we talked about a couple episodes ago. It was like, you can be exciting and still be smart.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
That's the challenge.
No.
But it's like you said, it ends up you simplifying it. You just go out there and
Mm-hmm.
kill this person. That's the job.
Pick a limb, try to take it home.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, like 5, 6, 7 minutes, whatever it is. Just do it.
I
Yeah.
would say 5, 6, 7 options.
5, 6. Well, yeah, I'll leave it at that. No. Yeah. Well, whatever. You do what you got to do to win.
Yeah. I mean, credit to my opponent. Like, she also like came in hot when we like locked hands. I was like, oh, okay, she's kind of, I could tell she kind of had the same mentality I did. And I think when both people take that approach where they both really want to come out aggressively and they're both hungry for that win, I think it just intrinsically ends up being like fun to watch because you can tell like they're really hungry for it.
I had just, because you were right after me, I had just gotten back into the like locker room.
The green room.
Green room.
Yep.
Yeah. And like everybody was watching your match.
Yeah.
So they were locked in on it. So
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah.
you guys had an exciting match.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. But yeah, huge shout out to my opponent. Like, she also definitely brought the fire. So
Let's talk about writing.
Yeah.
all right. Yes.
So like what you're doing, it's young adult novels, correct?
I do, yeah. So my primary focus is on novels, specifically genre novels. So I write primarily, my home publisher right now is Penguin Random House. I mostly write for an imprint called formerly Razorbill. They've now been merged into Putnam, and they produce young adult literature. I'm a big old science fiction and fantasy geek, so that is the subgenre that I'm in. So that's what all of my books have been so far. I'm definitely open to kind of like expanding my portfolio, so to speak, and writing for other age groups. I don't know that I'll necessarily jump genres. I think I'm pretty happy doing speculative fiction. But I've talked to my agent before about like writing either older or younger as well. So that could be really exciting. But the imprint I'm with right now is very focused on teen literature. So that is what I've been doing since 2018 or so. So that's what I do when I'm not getting beat up by you guys on the mats.
I definitely read more when I was a teen than I do now. So, I mean, it's probably a pretty good audience.
Yeah, it's a fun,
interested.
yeah, definitely. It's a fun age group to write for. I think especially because I tend to focus on like upper YA, which is like older teenagers. And that ends up being kind of a crossover category because you're essentially writing a book that is like teen friendly and like accessible to high schoolers. But because they are on like the older end of like kid lit or like children's literature, like a lot of adults will pick up those books too, because like, it's like, okay, this is something that could be a crossover title where it's like, okay, it's accessible to teens, but this could have easily sold to like an adult in print as well. So you will kind of end up getting the best of both worlds and courting both audiences, which I think can be really exciting as a writer.
Do you have to have like a process, like a disciplined process, like for being a functional professional writer?
More and more so. I think like before I like quote quote like turned pro, so to speak, and like writing was still technically a hobby rather than a source of income. I was a lot I mean I imposed discipline on myself because I did have the goal of eventually wanting to sell my work, but like I could afford to be a lot more loosey-goosey with things like deadlines and getting edits done and things, because I wasn't really writing for anyone other than myself and like an eventual portfolio that I'd want to build. But there was no deadline on that, right? It's like, okay, I'll get to it when I get to it. And in the meanwhile, I have my day job. I have all these other things that I'm doing. But after after I signed with an agent and she sold my first book and I was suddenly on contracts and deadlines, I was answerable to this whole, macrocosm of an organization that
the
is
commerce.
The traditional publishing world. I can't really speak to what it's, because there are different ways to be a professional writer these days. Like a lot of indie writers are very successful self-publishing and like doing all of that on their own, and I'm sure in that case, like you maybe have to be a little bit more internally motivated. But as a traditionally published author who works for the Big Five house, I am very much beholden to penguins, lawyers, and contracts and things. So there are very material consequences to not getting things done at a certain point and turning things in on time. And of course, like deadlines are negotiable. You can push things around the same way you would with like deliverables in a normal day job. But it's not just you creating the work now. You're working with your editors, you're working with your publicist, you're working with your agent. Even though you are the one creating the product and it's your name on the cover, it is, I think, traditional publishing at least is still very much like a team sport in a way that I had to kind of get used to.
It's still like similar to like manufacturing or something. They can't do their job until you provide them with
exactly. Yeah.
So it does the whole process.
Right. My editor can't give me my red lines unless I give her like something to edit.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not just if you don't have it on time, it doesn't just mean like that little bit of extra time gets pushes the.
Yeah. Exactly.
Do you think that, and we talked a little bit about process, do you think that there's some crossover in like your process for writing and kind of like your preparation process for jiu-jitsu, like when you're doing like writing a book versus getting ready for a match, right? Like,
no, I think so. I think I've actually talked about this before, where that mindset, that very like discipline driven mindset that you have to adopt is similar, at least for me. Because we've all had like off days in training, right? Where it's like, you just don't want to do it. Your body is tired. Your joints hurt. Like you lifted heavy the other day, what have you. And you're just like, I'm just not on my game. I'm like a beat behind like all of my training partners today. I feel bad about my jiu-jitsu, but like, we don't skip training, right? We still show up. We're like, okay, I told coach I would be at this practice. So I'm going to be at this practice because I'm competing in like 2 weeks from now and I just can't afford to miss it. And it's kind of the same way with writing. Like before, I think like, when you are primarily like, I guess like a hobbyist who's not looking to make a profit off of your work and you're not working with a publisher, you're kind of just doing it for fun. You can do it for fun, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But if you are professionalizing and your goal is to eventually put out a product that people are going to buy and sell, you are going to have days where you don't want to do the work. You don't feel good. You feel like everything that you're writing is crap and you're going to have to do it anyway because you're on deadline and you have to turn something in. Maybe you're not going to turn in like the best possible work you could, but turning in something is better than turning in nothing. Just like showing up to practice and having kind of a crummy practice some days is better than just being like, oh, I'm just not going to go and just going to lie around and feel sorry for myself and, not get my rounds in. Like it's better, I think, to like push yourself through those bad rounds, like within reason. Obviously, you don't want to hurt yourself or overtrain, but the same thing with writing where like you don't want to overwork yourself, but like you want to like keep yourself on a schedule. Otherwise, it becomes way too easy to keep making excuses. The same way you'll see students come into the gym and be like, oh, like I'll just skip this one practice. And then skipping one practice turns into skipping two practices, turns into skipping three practices. You telling yourself, oh, I'm not going to like make word count today, or I'm not going to like, I'm just going to push off this deadline or do this on a different day turns into like, oh, like the next day I'm not going to do it either. And then suddenly you're scrambling at the last minute to get everything done. The same way you're like, oh no, I haven't done any prep for this tournament. And now I've got like a week to cram in like my game planning and get my body in conditioned and all that. And that never feels good. So I think in that sense, it's the two can definitely be compared.
Do you have to like manage your weekly calendar to say, you block off like 2 or 3 hours a day or whatever, like I gotta produce X number of words or something like that?
Yeah, typically, yeah. Usually when I'm closer to deadline, so if the closer I get to deadline, the more regimented I become about producing a certain word count every day. The further off, the more wiggle room I allow in. Like there are some weeks where I'm like, okay, I need to hit like 1,000, 2,000 words a day or less or more. And then there are some weeks where I'll be like, okay, I need to get this chapter done by the end of the week. It can happen whenever, it just needs to happen by the end of the week. So it's like a slightly looser schedule. And I can work that around like my training, my other obligations and all of that. But usually what informs my schedule is how pressing the task at hand is.
Imagine doing that. Imagine like having to write like 2,000 words and then go teach a bunch of kids.
I have had 2 days in fact.
I know you do.
Yeah. And and because my writing schedule sort of fits around my training schedule and vice versa, I do keep that in mind when I'm like blocking out like my writing schedule and my plan for getting a book done as well, where I'm like, okay, if I have to write like 2,000, 3,000 words, I'm going to schedule that for maybe like a Friday, which is usually my rest day for jiu-jitsu and for lifting, rather than like a Thursday where I know I'm like, okay, I have to teach noon class and then I have to teach the kids at 4:15 and then I have to come to your class and train and then I have to go to Mark's class and train again. And before I know it, I've lost like 5 hours of hard physical and mental activity.
That's the day.
Yeah. And I'm just not going to have the juice to produce a ton of writing. I can get a little done. I can maybe outline a few things, get some admin done, but I know myself and I know that I'm just not going to have the mental energy for like a ton of creative output. So I'll have to like be a little gentler with myself in terms of like what I schedule for myself for writing output on a day like that with like a lot of hard training and a lot of teaching. And then on a day where it's like, okay, only like I'm teaching like maybe one private and like I have like one class that I'm taking. I'm not doing like a super heavy lift. Okay, I have a few more hours in the day. I'm going to be less tired. I can probably bang out like a higher word count and just like really dive in from there. So it's always a balancing act, is better than most.
Do you like daytime? Do you write in the day, or you're like a night owl?
I am naturally a bit more of a night owl, but I do force myself to write during the day if I know that I'm going to be busy in the evening. So again, it turns into that thing where it's like we all have our preferences. We have those days where we don't feel like training or we don't feel like getting the lift in, but you kind of have to do it anyway because you're an adult and you're beholden to like other obligations in your schedule. So there are days where I'm like, I would rather just get this done like in the evening after I've had dinner. But in the evening after I've had dinner, like I have these other things that I need to go and do. Like I have an event that I have to host at a bookstore, or like I know that I'm going to be training super late into the evening. Maybe I'm covering like somebody's 7 p.m., 8 p.m. class. And then by the time that's done, I'm eating late dinner, showering. I'm not going to have that many hours left in the day before I have to go to bed. And then I'm like, okay, well then I have to just kind of tell myself, tough luck, Andrea. Like you're going to just have to get this done like in the afternoon then, because you're not going to have time or energy later on. So again, there is some self-discipline continues to be like an ongoing exercise and a skill that I think we're all constantly,
with it for life.
yeah, we're all fighting to develop. And I'm not perfect either. There are days where I just kind of let it go, and it ends up just not being as productive as I want it to be. But we're always working to improve, right? The same way we are on the mats.
Correct. And it definitely seems like you're like maybe this is like part of, you can tell us, I suppose. It seems like it's probably one of the business obligations of the publishing companies you work with. You seem like you have to go to a lot of events too.
Yeah.
Your book signings, all that.
For sure. I mean, you can say no, but I personally think it's important to show up and to put yourself out there. It is good for just networking and growing your brand and forming relationships also with bookstores in the area. Because when you're working with a traditional publisher, especially a big one like Penguin, you will have a publicist who will help you out where they can, but you got to give them something, right? If your publicist is like, hey, do you want to go do these events? And you're just like, no, every time eventually your publicist, they've got 30 other offers they've got to promote. They're going to give up on you. They you the same way, again, here's another jiu-jitsu metaphor. The same way, you can teach your students, right, Scott, as a coach, you can show up and you can help them perfect their jiu-jitsu. But if they keep on skipping class and they're not doing the effort, you can, there's only so much you can do as an instructor, right? There's only so much a publicist is going to be able and willing to do for someone whose heart is clearly not in promoting their work. Yep. So you as the author also have to be somewhat self-motivated in that respect. And different writers will have different comfort levels with that kind of thing. Some are obviously sticking true to stereotype, very introverted and kind of want to minimize the public facing stuff. And there's a way to do that. You can do more work online instead where you're not around the crowds as much. But somebody like me, I do kind of like being public facing. I like people. I like talking to folks. So I'm a little bit more willing to do that. And I've formed a lot of really great relationships as a result of it. So, yeah, sometimes it's inconveniently scheduled, but I feel like it's a small price to pay for
you're a professional. And if you want to be professional, you have to go all in.
Yeah. The same way you go to your business conferences as well.
That's right.
For your additional
you got to go all in.
Yeah.
You got to go all in.
Right. Where it's maybe it's not mandatory, but it's a good idea to go.
I get it. Yeah, I think professionalism is kind of a rare thing from people. Mm-hmm. I've seen professionals in quotes who aren't professional, not just generally speaking. And, I think it's a good thing. Mm-hmm. I think you should do it. I think it speaks to like you said, if Penguin or whoever has dozens, if not hundreds of other people they can choose to work with. Mm-hmm. It's a company that can. Why would they want to work with you?
Right.
If you're not doing some of the extra things.
Yeah.
It's a business.
Yeah, totally. I aim to make myself easy to work with because I feel like it's I think there's a saying where it's you can have talent, you can be good to work with, and you can be reliable, but it's hard to find somebody who has all three things. So as much as possible, sometimes the other factors are harder to control, but being easy to work with, I think, is something that anybody can control. So that's the one that I think that you should dial it on if possible.
Well, I imagine from your, from your audience, they're going to prefer someone that they can put the name to and they feel more attached to. Mm-hmm. They're more likely to want to purchase your books, and they're going to feel a connection with you if they can put the face to the name or feel this person actually cares about your books. She shows up to the store,
right? You do the events, you do the signings, all of that. Yeah.
So the more connected, anybody with whatever they're looking to get, whatever they're looking to buy, the more connected someone is to the person who's providing that, the more likely they are to.
Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Are you doing any writing for BJJ Mental Models?
So I do writing in the sense that I prepare research for each of the episodes that I do. I currently run a show for them called BJJ Today, which is their news and culture podcast on. Steve Kwan, the guy who runs the whole operation, he has a bunch of sort of sub podcasts alongside the main product. So that's the branch that I run. So I don't do a ton of writing that goes onto the website or into the product itself. But I do a decent amount to plan out interviews with the athlete of the week or the person of the week that I'm chatting with on an episode. So
it's probably a good break for you. You don't have to write.
Yeah.
Aside from time, you just
more
organize
talking
yourself.
Than writing. Yeah.
I get it.
I'm gonna just for it's just in case there's people on ours that don't also listen to yours without the crossover. Do you want to explain like the premise of your show, kind of what?
Yeah, absolutely. So BJJ Today is a news and culture podcast that's available on BJJ Mental Models Premium. So it is technically behind a paywall, but Steve also offers a free week-long trial for folks to just try out the premium content. And because it's like the news and culture arm of that podcast, it focuses more on current events in jiu-jitsu, cultural developments. We talk a lot to athletes who have big upcoming tournaments. We talked to, for example, Marcelo Garcia before he made his one championship debut. We talked to Adele Fornerino after she swept ADCC in the women's division this past year. So there's a lot more of that focus versus the rest of BJJ Mental Models, which is much more focused on audio instructionals and, as you might guess from the name, developing effective mental models for training jiu-jitsu. So there's like a much more instructive bent to the rest of the podcast versus my show, which is more about like what is currently happening in the world of grappling.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
So they need to sign up for BJJ Mental Models.
Yes, to access BJJ Today. Yep.
Go to the website.
Yeah, go to the website.
We'll put a link or something in the show notes so that people can find it and, hopefully.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So
are the episodes like, do you keep them very organized?
They're pretty well. There's like a little section on the website that has all the episodes that you can listen to in whatever order you want. So.
Okay. And do you have so you have guests on?
Mm-hmm.
But do you have like little segments where you're like, all right, we're breaking down. It's like, and I'm picturing Andrea as like on like a news. She's got like cars. She's like, all right, well, today J-Rod got kicked off of BT. Let's talk about that. Let's do 10 minutes on that. And, what's the scandal? And then
the story was pretty wild.
That was a pretty wild story.
I don't even know what really happened. It seemed like news. Maybe that's more culture. I don't know.
That
these subjects that like.
I think that is both news and culture.
Yeah. I would agree. Well, yeah, I've seen. I mean, you used to do. What was the other program you worked on?
I used to write for the Jiu-Jitsu Times back when they were around.
You guys did some podcasts over there too, right?
I think that might have been before my time. I think some of my colleagues ran a podcast for them that I did listen to. It was really good. But I was never a part of that. My first foray into podcasting has been through BJJ Mental Models. But I did write for Jiu-Jitsu Times for a really long time. I helped run the site. But yeah, that was actually a really great introduction to like kind of just the world of jiu-jitsu content, either written or audio to begin with, and developing, I think, like the storytelling skill within the context of a combat sport. Because like I knew how to write already, obviously, because of my profession. But I was not a trained journalist. Like I hadn't done the work that somebody coming out of like, say, NPR or WAPO would have. Like I was not a formally trained reporter. I was a novelist who had done some corporate content writing. So that was like a skill that I did have to kind of pick up from other folks who had been around the combat sports scene for a while. And it was one that I really enjoyed developing. Like I think like the through line in all of the work that I do is that I do just love storytelling. And I love jiu-jitsu. I love martial arts. So it was a really great way to kind of apply that passion.
Who's the most interesting person you've interviewed?
Oh, that's such a hard question.
Yeah. You would have known it was coming.
Oh my goodness.
We do a top 3 if we want.
Oh.
Like bottom 3?
I'm not gonna do the bot. I've
you want me?
I did talk to J-Rod pre-disgrace, and he was a good interview.
Pre-disgrace. I bet that dude's interesting to talk to.
He is. It was in the era of him kind of like coming up in the wake of his brother's success. So it was like after he had gone and buggy choked a bunch of people at like ADCC trials. So that was an interesting interview. It's unfortunate, like the events that have unfolded since.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Product of a perhaps problematic culture that continues to shift and change, and hopefully will try to fix itself eventually. But yeah, no, I mean, that was an interesting interview. Who else have I talked to that's really interesting? I mean, Adele Fornerino, obviously, like coming right off of that win out of ADCC was fantastic. What was fun about that was that I got to talk to both her and her coach. So it was really interesting getting both like the athlete and the sort of mentoring perspective on that front. Cause Scott, I'm sure, well, actually both of you both coach as well as compete. So like I'm sure that you have your own perspectives on what it's like to be the person sitting in the corner's chair versus the person on the mat, and both can be very stressful and have very high stakes in different ways. And so it was interesting hearing both sides of that equation, especially on a stage as big as ADCC Worlds. So yeah, no, she and her coach were a fantastic interview. Who else have I talked to that I really love chatting with? Obviously, Marcelo was. I mean, you can't not have a good interview with Marcelo. He's so personable. He has such a wealth of knowledge. I think there was something really meaningful also about getting to talk to him, coming back to competition for the first time after that stomach cancer diagnosis, and talking about that journey that he had as well. Just, even beyond the sport of jiu-jitsu, that's like a very human story. So that was I think that was like a really emotional conversation as well. Who else? I've talked to so many interesting people. It's hard to, Jazari Matuda was one of my first interviews with the Jiu-Jitsu Times. She was a trailblazer for women in jiu-jitsu. She had really interesting things to say. I think that was one of my first really great long form pieces. I think I'm going way over 3 people now.
Whatever.
Yeah. Recently, this episode isn't out yet, but I recently did an interview with Sarah McMahon, women's wrestling Olympian, again, real trailblazer for women in combat sports. So hearing her perspective on the growth of jiu-jitsu, the growth of women's wrestling in the US, the way that jiu-jitsu and wrestling and MMA have all kind of started converging almost under one umbrella, where we're doing a lot more cross training than we used to between the sports, is also really interesting to hear from her perspective as somebody who has coached and competed in all 3. So I feel like I've been really fortunate in that I've really gotten to talk to some fascinating folks in the sport. On the non-athlete side, this is a name that I had to drop, Chatri Sitchatong, who runs One Championship itself. That was also a cool interview because it was, I feel like it's great hearing from athletes, obviously, but it's a whole different conversation hearing from somebody who has to also do the behind the scenes work to build the product and handle the financials. So it was fascinating just getting that perspective as well. So talking to the business,
did he talk about having to deal with tough personalities at all? Because that's got to be 90% of what he does.
Yeah, I mean, he talked a lot, I think, about why he's so passionate about building the submission grappling product at One specifically, and what he was looking to do there. And the challenge of that, because kind of harkening back to what we were talking about earlier on this episode here in this room, we talk about the stress of having to be entertaining for an audience. When you're the CEO of a fight promotion, you really have to find ways to entertain your audience. That is your what arguably your main job. And so talking to him about his thought process in terms of picking athletes that he knows will put on a good show, finding the right matchmakers for them, finding the right rule set that will encourage them to go off and kind of put their craft on display in a way that's going to bring in new fans to the sport. That was a really interesting conversation. He talked a little bit less about difficult personalities and more about
diplomatic man.
Yeah, he's a very diplomatic man. He's been a high level businessman for a long time, but we did chat quite a bit about how he picks his athletes. And that there is it's not enough to just be good at winning in jiu-jitsu or in MMA or what have you. There are particular qualities that he's looking for when he's looking to sell his product. So that was definitely an interesting conversation to have.
I wonder if you would want to talk about working with the mafia in Asia. That's I think you want to talk about. There's no way that in combat sports in Asia, as long as he's been there and successful, he hasn't come up with really interesting
cross paths.
Yeah, he's definitely cross paths.
Yeah,
Dwight talked about it's why they basically they ended up dissolving Pride was because
because of Yakuza involvement, right? Yeah,
so
I remember that story.
Whatever, we'll just pull out of this, and then they ended up opening. I forget which one. Yeah, the Yakuza ended up basically rebooting it as something else. But
I'm sure he's got plenty of experience with the mafia in Vegas. That he's I've got just intercontinental mafia stuff,
right?
I can only manage one mafia.
Right. You can only multitask so much.
Well, he doesn't need a translator for the one in Vegas. It's a little cheaper to deal with.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So folks like Chatri, Some of the folks who run Iridium Sports Agency, which represents a lot of the UFC fighters, also hearing stuff from like the agent's perspective is also really interesting because again, it's that business side to the sport. So that's also, I think, just a story that we don't often hear. We wonder about it a lot, I think, but we don't often hear from the folks behind the athlete.
I think a lot of people that like the spectators, the people watching the sport don't realize like it's not just I don't think they like you're kind of hinting at. They don't realize how much there is beyond just
there's
the fight is in too.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a whole team behind an athlete, and not just on the physical side. Obviously, on the physical side, you've got the coach, you've got personal trainers, dietitians, all of that. But there's also like a whole business team behind a sufficiently high level athlete with a big profile.
Some of them can use slightly larger business teams sometimes.
I think so.
On the public view.
Yeah.
Right. Some of them you could use a good publicist.
Yeah. For sure. Some of them we don't want them to have good publicists. We want them to just let them just go rage.
Right.
Just say some wild shit.
You need a couple of those. But some of those guys like, hey man, you might have a slightly more successful career. You just let this person tell you what to say.
Just stick to the talking points and you'll probably have a better time.
Yeah. What do you how about this? As an athlete, as a student, Andrea, what do you want to work on? What's the next big journey you want?
In jiu-jitsu in general?
What's the
we can do jiu-jitsu, we can do whatever.
Yeah. I mean,
jiu-jitsuing and riding.
I think in terms of jiu-jitsu, I think it's kind of like a double path for me where like I do want to be the best competitor I can. Like I back in 2023, I was able to take home like a handful of major titles. I'd
say so.
Yeah, American Nationals, Euros, and Pans in Nogi for my division. And I came up short at Worlds, and I still want that world title. There is definitely the hunger for that, especially after seeing our good friend the doctor win that at brown belt. I would like to kind of complete that Grand Slam in my competitive career. So
the final Infinity Stone,
right?
Yeah.
And in terms of, but like on the other side of it, I do want to be a good instructor and coach as well. Which as you both can speak to from your own perspectives is also its own skill. And so I do want to develop my teaching skills as well and get good at cornering, get good at coaching, get good at building really good athletes too. So that's kind of what I'm working toward here at DMA with Scott. Yeah,
you are. You're developing a stable of tougher females too.
Yeah.
It's always like we're working on it.
For sure. And that's somewhat selfish on my end as well.
Yeah.
Because I also want to build good training partners for me, and that means toughening up a lot of the girls at DMA. Like I believe I'm currently like the only female purple belt. So I've got this crop of blue belts where I'm like, okay, I need you guys to step up and give me some hard.
So what's your strategy? Do you you try to be like as mean as possible and then see who rises to the occasion?
Oh, it depends. I feel like it's very like personality dependent. With like some folks, I can tell like they need a bit of a gentler hand. Otherwise they're just gonna crumble a little bit, and they kind of need to be slowly built up into somebody who could take the tougher love, so to speak. And some folks just want me to roll them really hard. Mm-hmm. They welcome that pressure. Mm-hmm. And I do have to like I'm not going to name names, but I have had conversations with a few of the women where I'm like, I can tell that you're giving me a lot of respect when we roll, and I need you to not do that. I need you to be a little meaner to me.
Yeah. Hey, you can get you don't have to go easy on me.
Right. Like I was just like, for both of our sakes, I'm going to need you to get a little more aggressive when we roll. It's going to be good for both of our development. And I understand why you're hesitant to do that, but this is me verbally giving you permission to step on the brakes a little more.
Yeah.
To gas.
Yeah. Sorry, on the gas. Sorry, misspoke. Yeah. Step on the gas a little more. The opposite of stepping on the brakes. I want you to stop stepping on the brakes. You're doing that too much.
Let it fly. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
I understand. Yeah, good. We'll keep doing it. Obviously, beat them up until they can beat you up.
Yeah. I mean, like a lot of them are getting really, really good. It's been really exciting to see and to feel. There have been a few girls where like sometimes like I'll show them the counter to something that I like doing, and then I'll kind of regret it. Like around later, I'm like, okay, well now I'm not hitting that favorite move that I usually can hit on you like easy as anything. Now I have to revise my game as well. And there's a moment of like, oh no, now I kind of regret showing you the keys to my castle. But then it's also like, okay, well, that's also making me better, right? Because it's forcing me to improve my technique and to develop also.
That's the job.
Yeah.
That's the job. The job is to give them everything that you know so they learn it faster than you did.
Yep.
Yeah. You get used to it.
Yep.
I understand.
Yeah. 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 Especially those girls who are like, because I moved up from 125 to 135 recently. And some of them are big, strong girls. They're like 165ers, 155ers. And I'm like, you sharpen your technique just a little and you've got a lot of like weight and power and strength on your side. So they are making me work a little more. And
there's that.
Exactly. It's the way I imagine you guys probably feel when you're rolling with someone like Shane, for example, where it's just like, okay, I have given you all of this technique now, and you are
using it against me.
This giant heavyweight man who's now using good technique on top of his existing physical attributes, and you have that moment of like, oh no, what have I done? But then it's like, no, it's good for me. It's good for me, and it's good for you too.
The scariest thing in the room is a heavyweight that has actual technique.
Right. It just feels so unfair.
Just the big dude.
Yeah. I'm always suspicious whenever Shane falls back to guard or starts looking to entangle with the legs. I'm like, all right, what are you cooking up, Shaner? What have you got waiting for us?
He's like, I think I'm gonna start liking knee bars. I was like, oh
gosh.
2 weeks ago, it's like he was just throwing knee bars.
Yeah.
Like all day.
He's seen them everywhere now.
Yep.
No.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're all going to have to prepare ourselves.
Yeah. Be ready to tap fast.
Yep.
Awesome. Andrea, thank you.
Thank you, guys. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. Is there, where can people find you? So how can we
support your writing?
I am Tang Writes on Instagram. That's ATANGWRITES. So just spelled the way that it sounds. And that links to pretty much everything I've got, my author website, everything. And if you're interested in listening to BJJ Today, you can try out a free trial with BJJ Mental Models at bjjmentalmodels.com.
Hell yeah. Excellent. And we'll put all of those in the show notes for you guys so that you can, you can just copy and paste if you need to, make it a little easier. So you don't have to replay that over and over again. Right? So we'll make sure to have that for you guys. And, thank you for listening to Fires Drinking Coffee. As always, follow us on Instagram. I'm going to stumble over my words for you guys. Find us. We have a Discord. So if you guys want to get in there, we try to build up a little bit of community, get people kind of interacting with each other, and with the show. We're actually starting to pull some topic ideas from there too. So like questions that people have, we started using them, and like answer them on the show if they're too good to just answer on there. Also like, rate, review, those things all help us. So when you go on like Spotify, you hit that 5-star button that helps us in the algorithm. So that'll help us get to more people's ears. Again, we don't really care if you want to say bad things about us, go for it. Just hit 5 stars, give us a negative review and a positive star rating. That's fine. But yeah, any other things to add, Scott? Nope. All right.
See ya. Bye.
All right.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, Andrea. See your